Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and in this video I'm going to explain you how to quickly create a basic dev environment using Docker. Okay, this way you don't have to install PHP, Python, Ruby, Java, Scala. It'll all just kind of be set for you in this one image, and I'll show you how to open it in Visual Studio Code. So the only two things you need to have installed going into this, if you're watching this, is you need to have Docker installed. So make sure you install Docker. So if you're on Linux, Windows, or Mac, just type in your operating system. So I'd say I'm on Ubuntu, a version of Linux. And I'd say Ubuntu, how to install Docker. Okay, I would look up the directions and install Docker. Okay, you can confirm that Docker is installed by opening up your terminal, or if you're on Windows, Command Prompt, PowerShell, and you should be able to do Docker --version and see which version of Docker you have installed. If you get that output, then you have Docker installed. For just to be 100% sure, do Docker compose -- version. Usually if you install Docker, it installs both Docker and Docker compose. Okay, and give that a second and see it'll give you a version. So long as you get that output from those two commands, you're in good shape. Okay, and that's going to be the bulk we need to do. The other thing you're going to want to have installed is going to be, okay, you're going to want to have what's the word I'm thinking of? Visual Studio Code. So that'd be code.visualstudio.com. And when you go there, it should detect your operating system and be ready for you to download what you need. Okay, so those are the only two things you need. You do that, we can have a developer environment where you'll have Git, you'll have everything you need to do what you need to do. You also will, actually you don't necessarily need Git, you can. But if you're on Linux or Mac, you'll have Git out of the box. If you're on Windows, then you'd want to install Git Bash. Okay, and you'd want to use this tool here. Okay, if you're on Windows. Cool. So essentially what we need to do is that I have this image here called basic dev environment. Now what this is, it's an image that has pretty much all your main programs installed. Now I made this back in, now it's February 2022. So once in a while I will update this image so that way it has the most up-to-date versions of a lot of this software. But let's say you want to make sure that you have the most up-to-date versions of each piece of software along the way. Just build the image from scratch. You could just do that by going to right here. There's a GitHub repo where I actually have the sources for which I create this image from. And here it'll give you the directions on how to just do the build yourself. You have Docker, you can quickly clone this, run a command, and it'll rebuild the whole thing for you. Okay, won't necessarily go into that now to keep life simple. Okay, but at its simplest, all you could really do is you just open up your terminal here. Okay, and I'm going to want to run this image. So the name of this image is this right here. So Alex Merced, basic environment, tag name. Well, actually, let me see here. Is this the main page? Let's go to, let's just do a quick search for my username here. Here on Docker Hub. And we want this basic dev environment container. Okay, and I guess that is the name we need to use. Okay. But there is no tags in this repository, but we'll just click, so it'll just be Alex Merced / basic dev environment. So I'm just going to copy that. Okay, let's see if I go back to the Docker Hub here. So let's take me back to this space. All I want to do is just a search for my username. There we go. Because I want to see what everyone else is going to see, which is going to be this. Okay, so that's the command we want. Now you could pull it first. Okay, so that means what I would do is I would just go here, tell Docker to do a Docker pull. This is going to pull down the image so that way you have the image on your computer. This may take a second. Okay, so it's going to take a second. It's going to go download the image, depending on how fast your internet connection is and all that stuff. And it's going to be like a couple gigs because it's, you know, all these things are installed. But the benefit is they're going to be in this isolated environment that you can turn on and off, and it doesn't have to mess with the rest of your computer. So you don't have to worry about it messing with the other files in your computer and breaking other things you have installed. It's just in this isolated place. You can go play inside of it. If for some reason you break it, you can always just start the image from scratch. Okay, that's the beauty of Docker. You can create this sort of isolated place to, like this little isolated mini computer in your computer. It's a little bit different than a virtual machine because it's not a, with a virtual machine you are really spinning up like a virtual computer. Here you're just kind of spinning up a isolated file system. but you're still sharing resources with the other computer. You're not designating like, hey, this little virtual computer has this much RAM and this much storage. That's sort of the difference between sort of like a Docker at a high level. The difference between a Docker image versus like a virtual machine with something like a virtual box. Chances are, if you're watching this, that meant nothing to you because you're probably watching this because you don't want to install this stuff and you're starting to learn programming. No worries. Just later on, you'll appreciate a lot more of what I've just said as you learn. But the idea is this is a great way, whenever you get a new computer, just have an environment ready to go that's nice and clean and replicatable. So that was consistent from every computer you go to. So that's it, it's almost done, so let's pull complete. What it's doing is that when you create an image, so like when I created this image, there's a lot of different like layers. So what happens is that to create the image, I wanted to install things, I wanted to move files around. Each step becomes a layer of the image. Okay, so I'm saying do this, do that. So that's all the stuff that, if I go back to that repo. See, this Docker file is the file that actually creates this image. So I had all these commands, I installed all this software step by step. You can read this so you can see exactly. Technically, you could also just repeat these steps on your own computer and you'd have the same environment, assuming you're using Linux. But essentially, each of these steps is a layer, and so that's what it's doing. It's kind of downloading each layer that builds this image and the state that it's in. So it's getting there. Oh, it finished. Okay, cool. So now that you have the image, what we want to do is just run the image. So we'll do docker run, meaning I want to run the image. I'm going to say I want it to be in IT, that's in interactive mode, because I want it to stay on. The way I set this is that it's going to run bash at the end. And see, this entry point command here. Bash is essentially, this is bash, the terminal. Okay. But since that's not an ongoing process, it's going to run that command, nothing's going to happen, and the container is just going to automatically shut down. Okay, we want it running, so we want to say, hey, open this in interactive mode so we can interact with the running container. So IT, this the IT flag is to run interactive mode, and we just say, hey, docker run IT, and then we're going to put the name of that Alex Merced / basic dev environment, and then we just run the container. Okay, and see, now I'm inside this container, developer at 8E55 whatever. Okay, that means you're in the container. So this is the container number. Okay, and then this is, and actually let's add one piece to that. So I'm going to exit this. That's going to shut down the container. I'm going to rerun the container and give it a name, which will actually, I think, run a whole new container. So docker run -it. Then I also want to give it a name. I think it's -- name. I would just call this dev environment. And then I'll just say, and then again, the image is Alex Merced basic dev environment. So I'm saying, hey, run this container in interactive mode, give it a name of dev environment. The reason I'm going to do that is it makes it much easier to shut off later. Okay. And then we're going to run it again. Cool. And you see, it's like a new container. So how can we tell? It has like a new number. Okay. It's basically generating this new number that identifies that particular computer. So now I have multiple copies of this thing. Okay. But the benefit of giving it a name, so let me open up another terminal. Here we go. I can go docker ps containers. So I can see all the containers that I have. So container, I forget if it's containers. I think it's containers -all. No, it was container. Oh no, it was docker container ps all. Okay, see, I have 2 containers. Let me just make sure that this one got a name. And you see this one has a name, dev environment, and the old one, they do give it like a random name, but you see it has like this random name like sad surf, and we can't really see the whole thing. Okay. And the beauty of that is now I could be like docker stop dev environment. So I can call it by name and say stop that container when I'm not using it. So you'll see it'll stop it. May take a second. Yep, and they're finished. So now if I go back to the other terminal, you'll see that it stopped. But now if I want to start it back up again, I can just call it by its name. I don't have to type in that whole command. I can just be like docker run. I still want an interactive mode, but say docker run dev environment. So instead of spinning up another copy of that image, I can keep working with the same copy, that same container. So then I'll run that. Okay, docker respond. I think it's docker start actually. Docker start -it dev environment, because it's already a container that's already begun. Run will always run an image you have downloaded, so it'll create a new container based on that image. Start and stop will start and stop containers that already exist. So I do that. Oh, I don't think I need the IT flag here. We'll just say docker start dev environment. There it is. So no, and then do docker container ps. Okay, and you see it's running. Okay, so there it is. The basic dev environment is running. There's the name. So now that container is just kind of running in the background. Now what I can do is if I open up VS Code, this is the thing that we can use to like write code. What I can do is I can just open up a folder. I'll create like a new folder that I'll call it like basic dev environment or my dev environment, because this is where I want to work out of. And I'll just hit OK. And what you're going to want to do is that here in extensions, these are like additional things that add additional functionality to VS Code. What you're going to want to do is type in remote containers. Remote. Yeah, and then you want to download this remote containers, this extension. Okay, so now that that is installed, it's already installed, but you just want to make sure that it is installed. But you're going to go down here, see this little gear here? That's going to take us to what we want, which is the command palette. And with the command palette, what you're going to do is here you're going to see like hundreds and hundreds of commands. Okay, depending on how many extensions you have installed. But what I want is this specific one. So if you don't see it at the top, you can just type in like remote containers and it'll like give you the remote container ones. Now, we could open a folder in a completely fresh container that VS Code will make for us. Like if you just wanted to open up a Python folder, it actually has this wizard that'll walk you through just saying, hey, I want this folder to be a Python folder, and it'll create a new image for you for that folder. But we already have this image running. So we just want to open up the folder in that container that's already running. So you want to choose this option, attach to running container. Okay, and you'll see it lists all the containers that are running, and I say, hey, dev environment's the one that I want to attach to. So what it's going to do is going to reopen that folder. Actually, what it just does, it just opens up VS Code inside that container. Okay, so right now what we want to do is open up a folder in that container. But basically, as far as you can tell, this VS Code is inside that container, working from inside. Anything you save is inside the container, inside that image of itself. Okay. Cool. Connected to remote. It's going to take a second. There we go. Now when you click open folder, eventually it's going to show you this, and I can open up a folder in there. There really aren't any folders in there at the moment. Hit OK. And see, I'm inside the container. So right there is showing me I'm in the home folder, and I can see all the stuff that's in there. Okay, cool. And then I can open up a new terminal. And this terminal acts like I'm in the container. So give it a second. It's going to start up. Actually, it might have already started up. Let's just do an ls. Yep. pwd. And yeah, see, I'm in the home folder. And all's good. And now if I can see that all my software is installed in here. So if I do python -- version. Oh, I don't have that particular one. It's just python 3 -- version. So Python 3 is installed. Java is installed. Unrecognized option. Could you not create? Okay, that must be some other little issue. If I do Scala, let's see if Scala is working. Okay, Scala is working fine. You have Ruby -- version. So there's Ruby. We have PHP installed. Cool. And now I can run scripts in here. So for example, and I also have Node -- version. Okay, and I have Deno installed -- version. And so you didn't have to install any of this stuff. Okay, that's weird that didn't quite run there, but that's fine. Not really particularly important. Node is the important one. So for example here, if I want to, what I can do is I can create a new file. So let's just test each of these out. So first I'll create a new JavaScript file. So we'll say hello world.js. That's a JavaScript file. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say node. Well, first let me actually write some code in it. Console.log hello world. And I'll say node hello world. Hello world.js. And see, it works. It ran the script. Now I can do the same thing in PHP. Okay, so let's try that out. So I'll make a PHP file. So we'll say hello world.php. Okay, and the PHP file would start like this. And then I can just do something like echo hello world. And then I need a semicolon at the end. Okay. And now I can be like PHP hello world.php. And see, that works as well. Okay. And let's try Ruby. So I'll make a Ruby file, hello world.rb. Okay. Oops, I put that in the wrong place. Let me put that over here. Again, you can make folders when I just don't want it in the SSH folder. Okay. But essentially all this is happening inside the container. This is not in your file system, but inside the container's file system. Okay, so when you start and stop that container, again, if you do docker run and create a whole new container, that container is going to be fresh. But as long as you start and stop this named container dev environment, the files should carry over. We'll test that out in a second. Okay. So let's see here. What do I want to do next? We were making a Ruby file. So let's just test out Ruby. So that would be like puts hello world. So then I would just type in Ruby hello world.rb, and it works. And the last one we'll try out is Python. So we'll do hello world.py, and I can see hello Python. Well, I have to actually put the code here. Print hello world. So you just saw hello world in 4 languages. Okay, Python hello world.py. Oh, Python 3. Python 3 hello world.py. Cool. And just for good measure, let me try, although right now it's the syntax is escaping me. I would try Scala, but syntax is escaping me at the moment. Okay. Cool. So basically I did all that. I worked out of there. It works just fine. Okay, and the cool thing is you have all sorts of like options around here. Okay. Let's see here. So see, if you here go to this remote explorer, this shows you the containers you have running. Okay, and you can, this is added by that remote containers extension, and you can like take a look at the different volumes that you have set up. Volumes are just basically a folder where you can save stuff that's in the container. And generally, I think VSCode automatically creates a volume whenever you open up a container in there, but it automatically kind of figures out which one goes with what. But you can see which containers you have in there. You can see, hey, what's going on with this container, and like edit it. There's all sorts of cool stuff you can do here. But let's just show you that those files will stay there if I stop this container. Okay, again, the minute I get rid of, again, a new fresh container from the same image will be fresh, not have these files. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the container. So I'm going to say docker stop dev environment. Because again, we gave it that name earlier, dev environment. So if I do docker stop dev environment, it's going to stop the container. VS Code might complain. Okay, well, I'm just going to close this for the moment. And give that a second to stop. Okay, and then I'm going to say docker start dev environment again. Okay, and now I'm just going to I just want to open terminal right in here instead of opening it up in VS Code all over again. So for that, I can just do docker exec. That allows me to execute a command to that container and say docker exec. I think I put the name of the container next, dev environ. And what I want to exec is bin/bash. That's going to execute the bash shell. Oh, it's dev environment. Dev environment. Okay. Well, it did the job, but didn't. That's only if you want to execute like a one-off command. So really, what I want to do is do like an ls, and you can see the hello world files are still there, because ls lists the files in the current working folder. But then I can go back, open it up in VS Code again. All those files will be there, and I can continue working on it. But the benefit here is I didn't have to do all that setup. I didn't have to worry about troubleshooting anything. I just have those environments. I can just work with them and start working on programming right away. Okay. Still probably, again, there's no perfectly snap your fingers way of doing it, but this is pretty close. So hopefully you guys find this useful. My name is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. Do make sure to join the Slack communities. So again, over there at devnursery.com, where you can find all my tutorials. Over here is all sorts of tutorials on all sorts of things. Okay, you can find a Slack and a Discord community more geared towards sort of newer web developers. If you're in the data science, data engineering, or data analytics space, you can join my other Slack community, Data Nation, by going to datanation.click. This will take you directly to the Slack community. Okay, so check those out. Keep in touch. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. And you can also find my blog right here, where I have blog all sorts of tutorials on all sorts of cool stuff. Just generally, especially if you're in the web dev space, you're going to find something that's going to be helpful here for most low-hanging fruit in pretty much most languages. But I'll see you all later. Have a great day and enjoy.